Could be. Oh, here we go. Now
The
we're
stream
live.
is live. Here we are.
Awesome. Well, Kareen, thank you so much for joining me again. Should I do like my DJ announcer voice for
Yeah,
just
let's
like
hear it.
normal?
I want to
All
hear
right.
it.
Kareen to the main. Oh wait, no, hold on. That's my Let's Get Ready to Rumble one.
Yeah,
Um,
Sunday, Sunday, Sunday.
Sunday. Well, thanks for joining again, Kareen. It's pretty awesome to have you come back and chat and try to unpack some of this kind of skills thing. Just as a quick kind of summary where we kind of left off last time, we were talking about kind of skills and a little bit about your article with the guild, around building a skills-based organization, which obviously is, of interest to a
Yeah.
lot of us L&Ders out there. And as people are going in, we're realizing it's a little bit trickier than just like, yep, we got a skills-based organization now. Awesome. GPT that right up. Um,
Yeah, I
and
did.
so,
We add it. It's fine now.
yeah, we had it. It's all good. It's all good. So I think like today I really want to kind of get into, as I love to hear and say, the squishier elements of skills.
Yeah.
Some of the stuff that one of my favorite terms, now that I've heard it, I don't even know who I heard it from, is the human skills, right? The stuff that we can't chat GPT our way out of. And then not to say that the technical skills we can, just chat GPT the code and it automatically writes itself yet, although I hear
Yeah.
that's coming. But anyway, thanks for joining. So I appreciate that.
I actually hope it does happen because I definitely regret that I never learned how to program. Uh,
Oh
Despite
yeah,
some early starts, I just never really got into the full coding experience, but maybe that'll be okay in a couple of years. I
I
can
I
just
have
say
some
that.
evil plans, Green. I
Yeah.
think you and I would build some pretty scary stuff if like coding wasn't our blocker.
If that wasn't the
Um,
blocker, absolutely. Oh my gosh, that's my retirement plan, Josh.
exactly,
Just
exactly.
like, okay, AI, get good enough that I can retire and build all the things that I've imagined over the years. That would be
100%. I'm like, all right, how to take over the world through. Oh, I got it.
but
So, okay.
all all of that aside, what I've learned over time is that even if you have the best coded product in the world, it doesn't actually get traction unless you also have the people side of people understanding the value, people being it right. Like there's that human experience and that human element which
100%.
makes businesses successful and ultimately then translates into skills and what skills do you need to actually be able to marry the technical with the human
Exactly.
skill side. So,
Exactly.
yeah.
And that was like one of the best segues I've
Thank you.
ever had. That
I
was
did you
awesome.
like how I brought it right back? That was
That was
fantastic.
it. Like, all right, Josh, you're gonna just like go off on tangents. That was awesome. All right, fine. Duly noted. So tons of skills. All right, organizations are spending a lot of time, right?
Yep.
And we're all racing to kind of figure out how to do these skill frameworks and kind of what tech we're going to use, what products we're going to use. And AI is in a lot of ways accelerating this and
Yeah.
fast tracking it and kind of force multiplying both the need and the speed at which this is doing is kind of happening. And so right now we've got some pretty clear cut metrics on how to evaluate some of the technical capabilities outside of
Yep.
AI and all that. But you can click the button 5 times, hit this button, hit that, boom. All right, yeah, you're pretty competent. Or if you're writing code, here's a source example. Can you do it? Yes, no, validated.
Yeah, it's a
Right?
lot easier to demonstrate and prove, right? Like if you're
It's quantitatively more easy, right? And
yes.
yes, there's some qualitative assessment, but for the most part, it is a relative, you can do it or you can't, right?
Yeah.
Whereas,
Yeah, and the
yeah,
observation even elements of those types of skills are a lot easier of like,
right,
can I see it being done or not being done is
right. Can
pretty clear cut. Um, Human skills, what was the term you used? Squishier? Squishier. Um,
Squishier.
yeah, it's squishier on the
Squishy is
human
a good
side.
word for it, right?
It's a great word for it.
So, I mean, human skills, leadership,
Yeah,
teamwork, empathetic. communication abilities, not being a jerk,
Yeah.
all these that are absolutely critical to kind of getting stuff done, to getting work done, to having a successful
Yeah.
organization. So as an organization, like how do you go about kind of building kind of this framework?
Yeah.
What do you do?
It it's funny. I've had so many examples over the last even several weeks of thinking about specific use cases where human skills can make or break an organization's success.
Yeah.
Um, so things that we know, because there's data out there to prove it. We know that people are typically more successful and stay with organizations longer if they like their managers and the people that they work for. We
Stealing my thunder.
know
I was gonna reference that.
we know that even in um, jobs that are traditionally thought of as blue collar or manufacturing or more like technically oriented, that the people who are successful in those jobs have both the technical skills and the people skills to be able to collaborate and to work well with teams and all of the things, the job skills, communication, all of those things can be the difference between someone who has the exact same technical skill set being successful or not successful in relation to their
Right.
peers. So, and I could go on and on. I'm working with another mutual friend of ours who is about to publish a book. I hope she doesn't mind me mentioning it. Called I actually don't know what the title of it is, so I'm not doing a great job of
Awesomeness in
promoting
a
her. But
book.
it's about design for all. So, and it's Sarah
Right.
Mercier. So when you see it, buy it. It's coming out soon. But it's
Absolutely.
thinking about how do you as a person, as you're designing products, experiences, like learning in the case of our industry, how do you make sure that you are kind of looking at that from a holistic point of view? That's empathy, that's thoughtfulness, that's having the desire to, right? Like those are human traits that paired with skills, right? Like those human characteristics are things that you can develop. Do they develop as quickly as technical skills? Nope. Do they are they easy to measure? Not particularly. Um, and I want to talk about leadership in particular for a second because I think
Yeah.
going back to the whole employees stay or leave roles because of managers. Um, and while that's not 100% universally true, people want to learn and they want to grow in their careers and all of the things. But
Well,
certainly
it's an
managers
indicator,
help.
right? It's an
We
indicator.
we
So
know that
no
it's
one wants to stay with a bad manager.
100%, and they'll leave an organization rather than leave a role because of a bad
And
manager.
and I've
So,
even experienced great managers where I've stayed longer than I should because I like them.
absolutely. And I think probably if we all think back to our careers, we point to the I want to rage quit this job because I don't want to work with this person anymore
Yep.
versus
Yep.
the I will stay longer in this role because I like the people I'm working with so much.
Yep.
So, the thing that's particularly difficult about measuring leadership skills and management skills is who is going to evaluate them,
Right.
because doing that at scale means either you've got executives in an organization who are now overseeing the leadership skills within a team, or is it centralized within HR? And are they actually embedded in the flow of work of how managers are
Yep.
interacting with their employees? Is it their peers who are probably busy with their own teams and their own responsibilities and don't have as much insight? Is it your employees who are probably going to give you biased input because obviously that's a power dynamic that creates biased feedback loops? So there's no good answer for how to evaluate in practice leadership skills. And
Right.
it makes it incredibly hard. You can do leadership development programs, you can create trainings, you can create cohort groups to like have peer-to-peer support. You can do lots of things to try to address it, but very rarely can you get good data on someone's actual leadership skills because of all of the bias and the ways that our systems are structured. So
Right.
I think it's a really interesting problem to solve. I think it's particularly challenging. And I think most organizations are are trying to think about how to address it in creative ways,
Right.
but it's not easy. It's probably easier for early managers who have mentors or have a little bit of support, but certainly once you get to a certain level within an organization, it's almost impossible to really know what's going on.
So while it's incredibly difficult to solve, right? There's lots of tech out there that attempts.
Yep.
So a lot of it does an okay job, right? I mean, but the
Yeah.
bias that you've already mentioned is kind of inherent in all of that. If I've got to evaluate, three of my colleagues on how well they like me,
Yeah.
I'm going to think they like me a lot. Or if I'm
Yeah.
naturally a little bit more shy, I may think that they don't like me very much, and in fact, they do.
Yeah.
So right. At Bongo, we're developing all sorts of cool solutions around kind of solving some of these squishier skills.
Yep.
But how do we go about doing it, right? I mean, like, what are things that we need to consider? What are things that we need
Yeah.
to keep top of mind? And scrap Bongo for a second, and this is frameworks for organizations. And
Yep.
let's deep dive into leadership, because I mean that is an evergreen, forever problem
Yeah.
until Skynet comes online and makes us all batteries. Um,
So so if I think about my own career and my own kind of trajectory, early in my career, when I was just starting to take on leadership roles, I got a lot of feedback.
yeah.
Or I could tell a whole story about my early mentor and his Socratic method of not giving me feedback by not giving me feedback, but um,
You came to feedback on your own.
I was encouraged to reflect on my own, which actually was not a bad
Yeah.
strategy, to be honest with you, right?
Uh,
But most folks have a better support system kind of very early in their leadership and management journey. Where I think we start to fall down is after someone has been managing for just a little while,
right.
we kind of assume
Okay.
we
You're
assume
good.
that they got to that point for a reason and that they're probably doing fine. And so I personally, at some point, just stopped getting valuable feedback about what I was good at or where I struggled as a manager, as a leader within organizations. And because a lot of roles people are promoted because of their strong job skills or technical skill
Yep.
capabilities
Yep.
and not their people management skills, it's this blind spot that's been created of like you get promoted because you're really good at your job, but you may not be really great at managing people
Right.
and
Well, and that
building.
that wasn't more than likely why you're hired. I mean, I find there are people hired
Correct.
into leadership roles right away, and then you have more assessments assessing whether you're good at that. But if you're promoted internally into a leadership role, those assessments sometimes happen, sometimes they don't. But as
I'm
as
gonna
you
I'm
said,
gonna even argue with that. I think people who are hired into leadership roles, if you've had a previous leadership role, it's just assumed that
got
you
it.
were right.
There we
Like
go.
it's like, oh, you've done this before, so you probably are good
Right.
at it, which is not a good assumption, as we all know.
Right.
it's
Well,
it's
and
not a
and
good
what
assumption.
is good? You crack the whip and everybody's 120% over target, or but they quit the next time they
And
they
let me even flip the coin. Like ignoring the people who, the bottom 20% who need an intervention. There's this like middle percentage of people who are leaders
right.
and managers who are probably pretty good at some things and not as strong as others. Do we
Sure.
know what those things are? How do we know? Like, how are we getting feedback? And what is a kind of unbiased view of how we communicate, how we handle conflict or difficult conversations? How do you actually put yourself in a position where you can get feedback in an unbiased, as much as possible way,
Right.
knowing that the system that is surrounding you as a leader is inherently biased for all of
Right.
the reasons we talked about. So, one, I don't think it's been solved well. There's a lot of kind of standardized assessments out there, things that can like evaluate your leadership skills. A lot of them collect data based on self-report.
Right.
So we're also biased about what we're good at. Um,
Absolutely.
right?
I'm
Like
going to self-report the good stuff.
absolutely. And I could go through I in my last role, I worked with an executive who took a leadership assessment. I'm leaving out all the critical
Oh,
identifying
please
information.
do. Yeah.
And after he finished it, he said, "Well, of course this is biased. I just said I was great at everything." And like, so that's, and he's like a thoughtful guy. Like he wasn't
Yep.
trying to be rude about it, right? Like he was just like,
Well,
if I would do this, like anybody would do this. And how can you identify your own blind spots? Like inherently,
right,
it's already a blind spot. You can't see it. So
right.
then people have tried 360 evaluations for all the reasons we already previously discussed. Either
Yeah,
people haven't seen you in action,
right.
or the people who have seen you in action are motivated to not share real feedback.
Or the
So,
360 happens once a year,
or
and I
right.
forgot.
Yeah, and recency bias of like based on the last, month of whatever
Yep,
I've seen of you is probably going to
that's it.
influence how I think about things. Yeah, there's all kinds of scope issues. So we were talking about a little bit about the potential of AI.
Yep,
We were talking about AI for human skills, which is maybe like the, now I'm blanking on what's it called when you have
squishy.
two words that
Oh,
are mean the opposite of each other, but yeah, anyway. AI for human skills.
AI for human skills. Right. Oh, right. Yeah. Well, look, I mean, but
I'm an
but but
English
that's it,
teacher, I
right?
should know this, and I have totally forgot. Anyway,
Try it in
somebody in the
French.
comments will tell me, and I'll be like, "Oh, right, that's what it is." Um, the reality is AI can actually, what it's particularly good at is giving consistent feedback. If you've got a rubric, if you've got like a scale, if you're able to infuse kind of expectations
Yep,
of what you expect to see, it can then evaluate against those expectations with less bias than you would get from human evaluators in most
yep,
cases. Um, and that I think, while it's useful for individual employees to get feedback on performance, so you want to evaluate sales skills, you want to evaluate customer service skills, all of that is great. But we also have other mechanisms in some cases for
sure.
getting feedback in those areas where leadership is really hard. And so if you can create a system to provide feedback for a leader, like why wouldn't I as a manager want to know where I could improve? Like if you really are a person who's invested in your career and development and continuing growth, and you want to do a good job of building your teams, and you want to support your people, and you want to understand like where your strengths and weaknesses are, if I could use AI to give me that feedback and say, here's what I'm good at, here's what I'm not good at. Okay, now I've at least identified where I need to focus. Can I practice? Can I get
Yep.
better? Like those are things that right now really haven't been possible. And suddenly we've got, I mean, I know we're going to talk about Bongo, but the fact that we can now create systems and experiences to give feedback in an unbiased way to leaders and managers around their human skills, and we can do that at scale, is really like for me like a game changer. Like
Yeah.
I don't know why every organization wouldn't do that. And I personally as a leader want to do that, right? Like
Right.
I as
Right.
a person who am interested in my own personal development and continuing development as someone who's leading teams and working with folks and wanting to get better at communication, collaboration, all of the things. I don't think it's a yes, we want the people who are at the bottom of the, the barrel to get better, but I
Sure.
think it's actually that middle section of folks that are like, yeah, I'm good, but am I great? Like, what do I need to do to like really
Well,
focus
and
and get better?
I think ultimately too, it's when we're kind of looking at our squishy skills or human skills, the technical skills have ROI kind of embeddedly
Yeah,
attached, right? Bad leaders, we know ephemerally people quit. We have some correlating data that shows kind of velocity of how that works or not. But if I can say I can take the middle 50%
yep,
and take them 10% better,
yep.
right? What ROI statements are we going to see out of that,
Okay,
right? So
I think I have a hypothesis. Well, I think I think
Throw it
we
out
actually
there.
know, right? Like,
I'm pretty sure we do, but
yeah, I think it's going to result in two main areas of improvement. The first one is employee retention,
yeah, which is huge.
which is huge. And the second one is going to be team performance, which
Which is huge.
is huge and arguably huger than employee retention. But that team performance piece for me is like, how do you unlock a team's potential? How do
Yep.
you actually get people to work together more effectively? How do you foster environments where people can make mistakes and be supported and learn and innovate and grow? How do you improve as a coach or a mentor so that you have a path for not just you getting better, but the people on your team improving and you having a critical role in helping support that? That team performance piece is money, right? Like
Yep.
if I'm running a business and I'm like, if my leaders get better, my whole company gets better. Really?
Right?
Like that becomes like such a critical component. There's I think there's a book, oh gosh, called Leading from the Middle,
Yeah.
or there's reports out of, I should actually have know the sources I can cite. Maybe after this I'll find them. But anyway, there's a lot of research and data coming out about how the role of managers is shifting from like a top down like waterfall approach
Yep.
to managers are now communicating up, communicating across, and communicating down, right? Like leaders are now the hubs of the organization where decisions are being made, and they're informing their executive stakeholders of what's happening on the ground in the business so that they can make the strategic kind of directional
Right.
decisions from the C-suite, but that the middle managers are the ones that are driving. So when I think of business impact and I think of the impact that managers have, it's shifted from can they effectively communicate down to can they effectively communicate in all directions.
Right.
And going back to human skills, again, I don't know of a bigger impact that you could have on your organization than to invest in the human skills of your leaders. There, boom, mic drop. Sorry.
There we go. There we go.
I
And
really
so
don't.
let's quantify that. Let's quantify that. Right. I mean, so
Yeah,
well, so
and how can you
we
measure it, right? Like, you're looking at success, you're looking at sales output, you're looking at
yeah.
product delivery, you're looking at, like, every aspect of, like, lead gen and marketing and conversion rates and managing your funnel to managing the development pipelines and ensuring that your teams are working effectively and have the right guardrails and processes to be successful. It's everything along that way, and most of those things you need people skills to actually implement them effectively, kind of pull them through, create culture shifts and changes to be able to adapt. And we know that technology is changing so rapidly, going back to AI,
Yep.
that change management and navigating change and bringing your teams along is going to make the difference between the companies who are successfully navigating through this new era and the ones that can't.
Right.
So,
Flatten and make it as
yeah.
multi-networked as possible. I mean, basically
Yep.
we're building, kind of these mesh networks within the organization where you've got kind of the leaders as hubs, but they're intersecting this way and that.
Yeah.
So we've got about 4.5 more minutes because I've been told if we go longer than that, you can't upload it and it breaks LinkedIn, or whatever.
The whole
So
internet just
the whole internet goes well because I mean, without LinkedIn, what do we veg on? So a couple things. Rachel Miller in the comments, she had some great feedback where the only time where people might feel free to share real feedback on a manager coworker is on their way out the door, which is too
yeah.
late to make a difference for that situation. It also means that the involved people might not care at all and just say whatever,
Yep.
because generally the involved people don't get that feedback. That's an HR feedback, and
Yep.
the post-mortem after you leave, who cares? No.
Honestly, I think that's true. And as I think we've all seen as the average tenure at any one employer is only a few years now, like
Yep.
most people are like, I want to maintain my network. I don't want to burn bridges. So even if there is constructive feedback that can be shared, A lot of times it's not. Like,
Yep.
even if it's not like, "Hey, barn burner, I'm so mad, this is why I'm quitting," which sometimes is what comes out during
Yep.
those conversations. It's not that feedback necessarily that's the most useful. It's useful, but it's also these were the difficulties I had in my team, these are the difficulties I had with my manager
Right.
directly, and that kind of stuff, often people are like, "It's not worth it, I'm leaving."
Yep.
And
Yep. And
so
it's just
it's
gone. That's great data to improve yourself as an organization. That's
yes,
just it's a
but
missed
it's just walking
opportunity.
out the door. Yep.
Uh, well, okay. So quick segue plug. All right. So you've been kind of working with us at Bongo, giving us some great kind of strategic advice on kind of how to build some stuff out. And in the last couple minutes, one, maybe just kind of mention a little bit about where you see tools like us kind of filling some of these holes, and
Yeah.
then two, give me like 30 seconds to plug the next one, which I'll show the audience a little bit about what we do.
Yeah, I mean, part of the reason why I've been so excited to work with you and the Bongo team, is really a few I feel like I'm gonna do a little infomercial here, kind of, but I have not seen any other examples of technologies that can give consistent feedback around human skills. And to be able to capture that in a way that one gives an evaluation of how well are you doing against expectations, but also really like gets into the details. Like what it's not just like, hey, you got an 8 out of 10 that is
Right.
helpful feedback, right? What's really helpful feedback is, hey, when you said this way, this like it wasn't effective, or hey, this actually had more of a negative sentiment than maybe you
Yep.
anticipated. And that's the kind of feedback and nuance that you can change and is actionable and gets to back to technical skills. Like it's observable, it's changeable. I can practice getting better at certain things. I can measure getting better over time. And
Yep.
so to break human skills down in a way that they almost become as measurable as technical skills, and you as a person can learn a lot about yourself and how you need to improve, that's groundbreaking. And so what I've seen with Bongo is that level of detail and that level of feedback. So it's really like in my mind the future of
Right.
how we can start to think about measuring and evaluating human skills in a way that I can actually learn from and provides that really important feedback loop, that we have missed in human skill development.
No, and I love that because I mean a lot of what we're trying to do here is sentiment has been out forever. I mean, Microsoft does it
Sure.
in PowerPoint and all that, but I mean, being able to apply sentiment with kind of work product, marrying
Yep.
the two together, giving you feedback on how well you're knowledgeable about the work product, but also, are you saying it well? Are you responding to this scenario in a human
Yep.
level? Or whatever it happens to be that you're wanting to measure across the board, across multiple divisions, and being able to understand it at kind of scale and being able to run it at scale becomes something that we can then track. And I mean that's why I'm here too, because I mean I saw it and I'm like, yep, I want to be part of this. This is good stuff.
Next time we'll talk about scenario-based learning, but I need to plug you because that's the other like element. All
Yep.
right, go ahead, do your plug.
Okay, well, look, we got to run. So, look, thank you everyone. On the next one, we'll probably can it. I haven't tried a canned live event before, so we're gonna try that, see if it breaks the internet or not. Mainly because I don't want to have to like show my demo skills like under pressure. But it'll also just kind of walk through a couple kind of quick examples, why it's impactful, maybe some data around it, and leave it at that. Thank you guys, everyone, for your time, and I'm ending right at the 30. Bye bye.